All right, so this quick video is going to talk about lysosomes, vacuoles, and vesicles. And lysosomes are structures, they are really just like a vacuole or a vesicle, but they are full of enzymes and they are full of hydrolytic enzymes. Hydrolytic is the adjective form of hydrolysis. And hydrolysis, if you'll remember, is the breaking down of polymers into monomers. And we have to bust up water to do that. And so they're going to be breaking down any kind of polymer into a monomer. This could be, an old organelle that's made of lipids and proteins and stuff. It could be a bacteria that has been brought into the cell. So a lot of your immune cells have a bunch of lysosomes because they'll bring the bacteria in a vacuole or vesicle, and they'll fuse it with a lysosome, and the enzymes in the lysosome will then break down that bacteria and kill it. It is also a part of programmed cell death, so we call that apoptosis. And sometimes cells need to die. For example, when you were just a little fetus, you had webbed fingers, but then before you were born, the cells between your fingers went through apoptosis. And so that's how you ended up with 5 distinct fingers. So sometimes apoptosis is good, sometimes it's not, but the lysosomes are a part of that. And so here you can see lysosome. This is bringing in some kind of food of some sort. This could be an amoeba maybe that just ate something out of the lake that it lives in. It fuses that with the lysosome, and that digests or breaks down that food so the cell can use it. This is another one, maybe an old mitochondrion. So your organelles get old. They do have a lifespan, and they are breaking down the mitochondria or this peroxisome, breaking it down by using the enzymes of the lysosome. And that's called autophagy, which means self-eating because it's breaking down parts of itself. They do think that lysosomes can sense whether or not the cell is healthy. And if the cell is not healthy, it can actually kind of send the cell towards apoptosis. They do believe it also is the thing that tells the cell whether to build, anabolism, or break down, catabolism. So if we need to store fat for later versus need to break it down because we need that energy now, they believe that the lysosome is the one to tell the cell which of those to do. They also think it can be tied to longevity because they're seeing the role of the lysosome in some neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. This is when the lysosome is making cells in the brain break down before they're supposed to. And so the brain is degenerating. And so they think that the opposite could also be true. So malfunctioning lysosomes could cause organisms to die early, or healthy lysosomes could cause organisms to live longer. And so they may use this as a target for pharmaceuticals in the future. All right, the next is vacuoles. Vacuoles are just storage. They're like the closets of the cell. They can store food or water, minerals, vitamins, poisons that the cell doesn't want, or maybe poisons that the cell wants to release. So if you think about something that is poisonous, it has to store those poisons somewhere, and so the vacuole is where that happens. There are some that have functions like contractile vacuoles. They literally have actin filaments so they can contract, and they help organisms that live in water not become too waterlogged. So they will help it pump out that extra water. The most famous vacuole, perhaps, is the large central vacuole in plants. And the main thing it stores is water. It also stores some other things for the plant. But when it is full, it will push outward on the cell and give the cell more structure. Now, the cell wall is giving the most structure, but this central vacuole is also providing some structure, some pressure that we call turgor pressure. And so when you have a plant that you've just watered and it's standing up nice and healthy and straight, that's because it has good turgor pressure. But when it's wilted, that's because it has low turgor pressure, and that's generally because your central vacuoles are empty because you haven't watered your plants. So go water your plants. And then the last one is vesicles. And vesicles are kind of like vacuoles, but they're on the move. So they are literally moving around the cell. And I'm going to show you a video next week that shows this. It's really kind of cool. But they are membrane bound. They store things. And they are pulled around the cell by motor proteins. They are produced by the endoplasmic reticulum, smooth or rough, and the Golgi body. And then they can also be produced by the cell membrane during endocytosis. We're going to talk a lot about the endomembrane system next week, and I'll go into more detail about vesicles and how they relate to the Golgi and the cell membrane and all that at that point. So I hope that helps. Here's just some pictures showing the Golgi receiving vesicles and producing vesicles and releasing those. They bind to the cell membrane for exocytosis. And this is just showing you some lysosomes in the plant cell, in the animal cell.